Hello and welcome to Worlds Cooldown, presented by State Farm, your one-stop wrap-up for all things Worlds 2020. I'm Dash, joined by Raz, Azael, and Mark Z. Lyric will be hopping in with us a little bit later to break down some of the LPL matchups. But before we get to that, gents, how we doing day one of groups? It's in the books.
Man. Yeah, I think that Group C saved us from a day of absolute just people getting slammed. I actually really enjoyed those last two games a lot. The first four were very one-sided, and you know, especially the Dom 1 and JDG one was unexpected to see it go that way.
Yeah, very much so. You mentioned total smashes through the couple first games of the day, rounded out with a couple close ones. Raz, coming to you. What are your big takeaways from day one here at the tournament? What are you looking at?
I feel like the last game kind of hit it home. It's right in front of you. They had top laners. I really enjoyed watching a lot of the top lane play. For me, Camille stands out like the most. It's particularly 369's Camille. He came out and just ran roughshod on solo, not only picking up the solo kill like you had mentioned, talking to Shox a little earlier on, but he was able to bring in the pressure coming in from Karsa, and this is what I love to see from him, watching domestic play, and then just be the sole carry for the team. And it kind of gives me hope for the tournament going forward, because like if we're going to be seeing a blind Renekton, he's the type of person to bring out the Quinn top lane, and I'd love to see Jax coming out of him. He is the pure quintessential carry top laner.
Yeah, I think that was an incredible performance out of him. 369. Obviously, there were 3 Camille's over the day, and we saw a couple Volibears into it as well, having different levels of success. So that's really interesting to see that being probably the premier matchup right now is Volley into Camille. And even though Broken Blade wasn't able to win on it, he still found some plays on the Camille, and you can see why it's so strong. Its laning phase isn't that bad. It can make solo kills happen, split push, and its team fighting is still respectable.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that, his side lane success was limited by how amazing of a game Selfmade was having. Yeah. And that Selfmade was never revealing himself anywhere on the map, so that makes it so hard to play side lane. But it did feel like LPL is bleeding into all the rest of the regions, because Volibear top is so popular in the LPL. These Black Cleaver Iceborne builds wasn't always what people were going for, but that is super standard in the LPL. And I think it was really cool to see, you talked about 369, but I also felt like the Malphite for Finn, that is great for what Rogue needs from him. Not everyone has to be a 369. Not everyone can be this guy. I think he's the best top laner in the world, but you still want to have versatility within your box, so to speak, right? I want to see Finn stay within the tank box, have Malphite, Sion, Maokai, Ornn, all those sorts of picks. You need some variety, but it doesn't have to be in play style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the thing that strikes me about that top lane champion graphic, right, is that you have things all the way from a Camille to a Malphite or an Ornn, and any of them can find success here at the World Championship. And to me, that really paints an exciting picture of the group stage, where you're hoping each team does find their unique identity and their best way of winning. But to the point you made earlier, Azael, day one did have its fair share of one-sided games, so it does maybe appear that a few of these teams are honed in, a little bit more locked into what they need to be doing than some others.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first 3 at the top of the day were pretty one-sided on paper. The fourth one, I think, was the one that was most surprising, but definitely some teams really came out of the game, out of the gates swinging, and are looking pretty dominant already.
Let's go ahead and pull up our standings then. Get a mental picture of where each of our teams stand with 6 games behind us. Of course, that means that 3 of our groups have played 1 game across the board. So you take a look there at Group B, and you've got Rogue and Damwon up at the top. Damwon versus JD, of course, the 2 favorites in that group, but of course playing each other today. Gen G, Fnatic pulling out wins in Group C, and then Top and DRX. So expected results in a lot of cases, as was mentioned here on the first day of play.
Yeah, for me, no real upsets. The one that I wanted to kind of zero in on was the fact that in Group B, Rogue coming in strong and JDG, of course, losing the game. But for me, the takeaway was the fashion in which it happened, right? Because I expected a more hard-fought game between Talon and Rogue, and I know we'll get into it. And I expected a more hard-fought game between JD and Damwon. But the fact that those were the series that came out as stomps as well, is for me a pretty big takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, JDG definitely looked worse than I thought they would, but I think they'll bounce back. So I think Rogue fans take a screenshot and enjoy being in that position while you can.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I think, you know, Group B, Group D are two of the groups that have been looked at from pre-tournament expectations as fairly decided. It's that Group C that a lot of people are looking at as really having the opportunity to go any given way. But I think that's what's going to highlight there, that victory that we just saw from Fnatic over TSM. While it was a close one, I think, in the end, simply having that W, that one in the win column for Fnatic does wonders when you only have so many games to play in a group stage.
It really does. I mean, we've seen so many times in the past series come down to a tiebreaker, right? You know, these groups can be decided by one game at the very start. You know, this may be the difference between going forward or not, as has happened to TSM so many times in the past. You know, ending 3-3, losing a tiebreaker, Worlds is over. This could be the difference.
It definitely could. We'll get back to talking ourselves in just a moment, but before we do, let's hear from Lore, who caught up with Fnatic's top laner, Whippo.
Thank you very much, Dash. Lore here. This wraps up first day of group stage here, and I have Bwipo to talk about the first game, Fnatic versus TSM. Thank you, Bwipo, for joining me. We saw you giggle during the game, especially during the top lane plays, but how was it for you, this first game?
I mean, it was a roller coaster because the first time I got the 2v1 kill and I was like laughing my ass off. I thought it was hilarious. I was like, look at these guys trying to gank me. And then Syndra TP'd on my lane and then I died. I was like, okay, I'm going to keep laughing because I don't want to show them that I lost mental. And then my jungler got 2v1 killed in return. And then I was like, okay, there's no way I can keep my mental. Even if I stop laughing, the mental is already lost. So everything but that, I had a really fun game though.
It was a super fun game to watch, and I mean, you won rather convincingly, even if it was a lot of kill trading here. But I mean, last time we saw you was after summer finals. You spent 2 weeks in quarantine in China. So how did it go? We didn't hear much from you, except on social media.
Oh, it was like pretty good, honestly. I got to revise some of my gameplay. I got to experience some of the Chinese solo queue, Chinese picks, try to mimic their aggression. I mean, it does hit close to home for me. So all things considered, the quarantine was quite comfortable for me. And, you know, I have my girlfriend to thank for that. And in general, it was just a great experience. I kept my sanity through the process. And eventually, well, hopefully I'll keep performing like today.
I am glad you mentioned the girlfriend buff here, because that's something we heard about during quarantine. But okay, moving on to the game, we heard a lot that this meta favors Fnatic in the sense that you play a lot of picks that are playable right now. Do you agree here?
I think when it comes to a farming style, yeah, that makes sense. Like, you're farming junglers, you have the Evelyn, the Nidalee, the Graves. Selfmade loves those champions. And in general, I think we started like to pick this up at the start of summer playoffs. Yeah. So all things considered, the meta hasn't changed much since that time, and we've been trying to make it work since then. So it makes a lot of sense. Like the Lucian Eve, honestly, it's a bit surprising that it went through, given that this was our mainstay. Like, this is what we came onto the stage with our first farming jungler approach as soon as the set volibear meta started to dwindle a little. So I think this was just like a comfort game for us. I don't think it was as clean as we could have made it, but all things considered, it was an alright game. I mean, we take those, right?
Yeah, we take those, and we'll see how TSM bounce back during the next game. But I mean, looking at the group, we heard that this one was the group of death. Do you still have the same feeling after seeing all the teams competing here today?
It's a group of death in the sense that anyone can make it out. Like, I don't think it's the group of death in the sense of like every game that you play is the last one, maybe. I think that a traditional sense of the group of death is when you have 3 really strong teams and then you have 1 very weak team. And the idea that if you lose the game against the weaker team for whatever reason, your tournament is over. Like, you have to beat the best teams twice in a row to come back after losing once to one of the weaker teams. And that is, in my idea, what the actual group of death is. But it still is a group of death in the idea that anyone can make it out. So it's up to your definition.
All right, well, we'll see how things develop in the next coming days. But we both thank you very much for the interview and congrats on this first game against TSM.
Thank you very much.
And back to you, Dash. Oh.
Nice.
Thank you so much, Lore. And Whippo, one of my favorite players to watch from a personality standpoint, both on the Rift and off. I love the reference to a number of those plays up there in the top lane that went both directions. And it felt like Whippo, and he even said it, he had the same reaction in both the positive and negative scenario, but mostly to protect his own sanity than anything.
Yeah, don't let it break your mental, especially plays like these. I know this one definitely took your heart, Azale.
Azale.
he stayed positive throughout it. I was ready to go next on this game about 30 seconds in after Biofrost.
This play almost saved it.
Yeah, I mean, this was amazing. I think Broken Blade playing, like this plus the early roam top from Bjergsen.
So
I mean,
sick.
Bjergsen was nasty early in up 20 CS, made the roam top lane for the kill. But this game really was self-made different. He stopped Broken Blade from being able to split because of the pressure he had. And TSM honestly missed out on so much farm, so many jungle camps because of the threat of self-made. I think it cannot be understated how far he was ahead in not only experience, but in pressure. Because he was denying TSM from going anywhere on the map.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing that stuck out to me. If you look at how many Drake setups that TSM had that revolved around them sneaking in through bot lane as opposed to trying to contest mid priority because they were so scared of self-mid. He had so much pressure on the game even before he started popping off, and he made that mistake, but it really didn't matter because the most important thing was getting his team ahead through vision control and objectives and all these kinds of things.
And that's what ultimately lost them Baron, right? Like when you're contesting from Dragon, from the bottom side of the map, like Fnatic ended up not only just taking a Dragon because they had control of that space and then control through mid, they cleared through mid. Like TSM didn't have the same urgency that was something that Fnatic could rush. Fnatic rushed Baron, got out of there like nearly scot-free. Like that's something what TSM's going to be pretty upset about, was that they couldn't get Camille ahead, or at least like snowball that lead because of the Evelyn's threat, but also just the fact that they were contesting opposite to Baron.
Yeah.
I'd also say I was pretty disappointed that TSM gave over both the Lucian and the Evelyn. Like, yeah, the Lucian didn't really end up being a problem. Bjergsen won lane against it, but like those were the big picks for Fnatic in playoffs. And it's kind of funny because TSM even put out a video, their group draw reaction, and when Fnatic got picked, they showed these Fnatic highlights, and it's basically just self-made killing people on Eve. And Bjergsen's like, oh, haha, so we ban Evelyn against Fnatic. and it's like, come on, bro. You even
GP?
said
Yeah,
it.
GP?
Like, where's the E ban?
I do think this game also had a lot of areas where both teams could clean up. Like, I think with the level 1 that we talked about with Biofrost, Hylissang made a couple mistakes as well. And I actually left this game feeling almost more confident for Fnatic because some of these things that went wrong for them, that their macro was already better. Like the fact that that's the harder thing to fix, I think, for a lot of teams, is like in the middle of a tournament being like, oh no, we just gave up Barons for free and Drakes and we had all these struggles. I think that's a lot harder to fix. I wonder how much that you can chalk up to Eve. But Fnatic was mostly in control of this game, and they had a couple areas I think that they could clean up, and I had them getting out of this group, and this was one. This was a day where it did not shake my predictions at all, and I'm still feeling pretty good about Fnatic.
Yeah, I mean, I can echo the sentiment of like today not shaking my groups, everything lined up, but I would have more faith in TSM after this one, because I felt like a lot of the mistakes that they made early on in this game were like, to Azale's point, pretty egregious.
Biofrost was egregious. I mean,
yeah.
Or a free first blood to Jhin, and then you're like, they like were winning lanes, like.
And on top of that, like Bjergsen, as you already had mentioned, was doing so damn well within the laning phase in a matchup that I've seen be difficult for the Syndra. And then Broken Blade just like went mad. He's like he took that game back into their control. So I think if they had come back with a better understanding of what they want to draft, and then like come in without that nerves, like I actually am now a little bit more nervous about my Fnatic getting out of groups thing. But like they still took the win. But it makes us a more competitive group when it was honestly a group that carried today's games into entertainment.
Azale?
And I mean, I think it just hammers home how close these teams are, right? The last two games really were exciting. I think Fnatic has a lot to be really happy about, and things that they could build on. I think TSM does, Gen G does, LGD does. These are all, really competitive teams, and I'm just so excited to watch more Group C because it seems the most exciting group by far.
I 100% echo that statement. I mean, we heard from Whippo himself saying that he believes really anyone in this group is a contender, and that's, again, why we're putting such a big focus on who ultimately came away with the victories today, because they've already set themselves up so well. So self-made, putting the rest of the team on his back in this one. 1-0 is the start for Fnatic. TSM moves on to play Gen G tomorrow. Fnatic will have LGD to face. But in the second game of the day, we did see DRX win in a commanding debut over the Unicorns of Love, one of our favorite teams from the play-ins. How do we feel about the showing here of DRX on the world stage, Raz?
Oh, hail Pyosik, man.
Yeah.
That guy was super impressive how he was able to track the enemy jungler. And on top of that, be able to hover through mid. You saw the play earlier on, what he was able to do. There was a lot of faith from Chovy to be able to lean towards him on that side of the map. I thought that this was a dominant game from the jungler.
The skill shot accuracy, too. They hit arrows on everyone. They were hitting spears from Pantheon. Nidalee spears were super accurate, chasing people through the jungle. Pyosik was the one who popped off the hardest. But, like, Pantheon, I think it was like they had 15 kills, and almost all of them were on their jungler and their support. I mean, you would not be able to tell that this was actually not a carry coming out of the bot lane. It was absolutely insane. So Kiera really popped off. Def was on point as well. It was just a top to bottom stomp.
I was going to say, there were 3 individuals that stood out to me today. 369 in the first game, Pyosik there in the second, and then Self-Made in the final game of the day. But the hard carry performance out of the jungler there for DRX is huge. But in his Worlds 2020 debut, it was Chovy who shows that he is the boss by making every second count, made possible, of course, by the Cisco network. Let's take a look.
Yeah, this was one of the first counter ganks that popped off, and it was, you know, Pyosik having a really nice play, but Chovy timing his shield, flashing the damage from Anana 6E to make sure he actually stayed alive in this, and that was huge, I think. So really impressive stuff to get out of there, and then land that haymaker to get the damage in, so Pyosik could actually reactive flash and change his target to get the first kill.
Yeah, that's one of those ones that can be so frustrating playing against Set, like how tanky he gets when he gets low, having all the extra regen, flashing the initial hit of that Q. But Chovy just a little bit too tanky, and Pyosik, I think, really did play incredibly well from this advantage, and we just saw kind of a skill gap in the players, it felt like, in this game, because I actually thought that UOL came in with pretty good preparation. I actually thought their draft was pretty solid. You know, they had a pretty nice matchup in mid lane against Chovy with this phase rush Orianna, who can kind of outscale and farm well with him. They had tools to actually dive and kill off the Ashe, so I felt like they set themselves up pretty well, but sometimes, you know, that's not enough, right? Draft is just one component. You have to be able to execute incredibly well on it to take down a team like DRX, and they weren't able to do that today.
And that play that was highlighted was, like, Chovy really needed that because the lane was working out so poorly for him. The wave is being held by No Man's for a good while, too. He was getting punished pretty extensively, and if that turned out poorly, then maybe we have another conversation. But, like, once again, Pyosik, really damn good job of being able to read the enemy jungles, like Pat. Like, he knew that it was all going to come down to mid lane on that one.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't flash that first spell. He gets charmed and probably dies right then and there. First blood goes the other way. And so, again, every second does count in that regard. We are going to step away, though, for just a brief moment. On the other side, Lyric is going to join us, though, to break down JD Gaming versus Damwon. There is more Worlds Cooldown after this. Welcome back to Worlds Cooldown, where we've kicked Mark Zimmerman off the desk. And for good reason. Trust me, it was for good reason. And that good reason is that we're bringing Lyric in to help break down the LPL matches of the evening. Lyric, how you doing, my friend?
Man, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. Reunited with Raz and graced by a literal world champion, dude. What a great day.
Damn right. Damn right. It's a good day for us every day in North America because we get to spend it in the proximity of a literal world champion. So welcome to the club, my friend. But we've brought you on here to talk about the LPL performances from day one. So I'm coming at you, straight away. JDG, Damwon. These are two teams that were looked at as, possible tournament favorites. This, by some was considered a finals or a semifinal preview in terms of caliber. How'd you feel about the performance put up today by JDG?
Sadly, a bit disappointed. Wasn't too huge on what JDG ended up with out of draft. And then especially what we saw in level 1, it felt like JDG didn't really even get much of a chance to play the game against a team the caliber of Damwon.
Yeah, honestly, to me, this spoke so much to preparation from the Korean team. I watch a tremendous amount of LPL like every year. I love to watch the region. And every time you see Lilia in the LPL, you will see these teams go for this level 1 invade. Not only was Damwon completely ready for it with their bot and mid laner, they actually pulled their top laner down there to have a 5v4. That got them the first blood. They continued the punish on Kanavi by preventing him when he went for Krugs down in the bot lane, warding that out. On his Raptor spawn, on. They were there waiting for him again. They killed him again there. Like, this was so well prepared from Damwon. And Kanavi is who most people had as the best jungler in the world coming into this tournament. And I think it is really amazing how Damwon were able to pre-plan and shut him down completely. And that just speaks so much about their research of the LPL and what these teams like to do.
Yeah, and even taking a step back, because all of this was pretty centered around the early game being demolished for JDG's perspective, and like, I really love Damwon's comp as the game goes on. And I have a lot of faith in this team to be able to play out a 1-3-1 effectively, at least at the very early game, like use Twisted Fate to really bully the side lane. In this case would be the Volibear. This is something that I want to see them utilize more and more going on in the tournament. I expect them to take actual bans on. I don't expect them to get Nidalee. I don't expect them to get maybe Twisted Fate. And I think Damwon showcased like what made them incredibly talented. I will say though, now teams didn't get to see how well they can play out mid game because of how much of a smash this was. So maybe another team lets something go through at least one more, and they can take one more free win.
The crazy thing to me was the fact that these are like Damwon's bread and butter champions.
Exactly.
Camille, Twisted Fate, Nidalee. It made absolutely no sense to me that JDG let these through. And then it was even weirder that they were like all inning on Yagao, trying to like smash in mid lane, which he had to blow Flash early, like in these early skirmishes. So he has to play a bit safer under turret. He's not allowed to abuse his champion to the maximum potential, but that's not even JDG's style of play to begin with.
One thing that is really interesting to me, and like I agree with you, it was pretty surprising to see some of these picks go over to Damwon. And we were saying the same thing about the TSM Fnatic game, giving over Eve as well as Lucian. So what that says to me is that the scrim meta is different than what we were maybe seeing from these teams regionally. That perhaps TSM and JDG saw different things out of Damwon and Fnatic in scrims and are more worried about other champions. And that is kind of something that is pretty interesting, is the evolution throughout Worlds and the difference between scrim performance and stage performance. Maybe teams need to trust a little bit more in what was shown on stage and not buy so much into the scrim hype.
Yeah, okay, so let me come back to you on this then, Lyric. What, if anything, is your major takeaway here? Is there concern for JDG within this group in dropping a game to Damwon, or is there still plenty of confidence around an easy top 2 finish, as is expected in this Group B?
I don't think there's any really disheartening takeaway. I mean, Damwon's still a world-class team, right? And I think even the inverse. Had Damwon given away in an early kill in the comps reversed, I think JDG probably could have shut it out just as clean. When you have the best teams in the world going head-to-head, right, it's going to be these very clean endings.
Well, we have JDG up against PSG tomorrow and Damwon up against Rogue. So, again, looking for JDG to get it done. Raz, back to you. Any other final takeaways here on JDG before we hop on over to the other LPL matchup?
I'm excited to see more of what Zoom and Yagao have to offer, right? Because I know everyone's going to be focusing on Kanavi and how smart of a jungler he is, but when they actually get to the team fights they play for, Zoom is an insane top laner. Yagao is a great facilitator. These are the types of things you'll be able to see when they're on even footing with these teams.
Now, while the matchup we just talked about was definitely a little bit more of a an expected high-level matchup, I'm particularly curious your thoughts here, Lyric, on Gen G versus LGD because of the performance put forth by LGD in the play-ins. A very tumultuous group stage followed by 2 immediate 3-0 best-of-5s to make it into the group stage. And then here up against one of the LCK's top 3 teams. How'd you feel about this showing?
So this game was messy. Both teams made a ton of mistakes, but I'm actually super happy for LGD because after that performance in play-ins, I was absolutely terrified because even on a mechanical level in their playing group, they were playing absolutely horrible. We saw Xie playing a bit better today. Mark was stepping up. I think Longxing in these team fights was an absolute monster, but Gen G, I will say, was a slightly better team, and I think we saw a lot of LGD's problems from the whole year still just plague them.
One thing I was honestly really disappointed with, in this, just on an individual level, was I felt Peanut super choked this game in the late game. Like, he was actually in a really strong position. This dragon fight that we just watched, not using his ultimate whatsoever. There was, another fight around mid lane where he tried to stay in range of the fight for his poke with his W, with like the Wolf W, which does almost nothing. Dom was full health, and then he dies to like one hit from a Lucian W, right? Like, he was just making mental errors, decisions that didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I felt like he was in a position to actually, win them some of these fights and potentially turn around the game.
Yeah, for me, with how the deficits were going early on in this game for LGD, I was pretty impressed with how LGD was able to pull it back, like, you know, Lyric was saying. I ain't going to go as far as what Hysteric's saying, right? Like, I know you get to hear a whole lot of that, Lyric, back in China. So I'm going to spare you on that front.
I want to echo, though, what Lyric said. I was really impressed by Mark in this game. Playing Leona, especially when you are in situations where the team ends up in a deficit, Leona can be one of those champions that ultimately is made to look really good or really bad. But him sticking to his guns in terms of what that champion is meant to do. Looking for the plays, exactly. Looking for the plays left and right to bring his team back in, and I appreciate that aggression on the world stage. Lyric, it was a tough day by all accounts for the LPL teams in terms of the win-loss record, but we have to acknowledge the caliber of opponents that they had to face here on day one. So, before I let you go, just your overall take here on the 3 LPL teams, or rather the 4 LPL teams. Don't mean to ignore Suning, who we haven't yet seen play, and their performance here at the top of group stage and what you expect to see in the coming days.
I'd say I come out of today slightly more positive because after play-ins, I didn't expect LGD to be able to compete in this group, but seeing them compete with Gen G today, seeing the Fnatic TSM game, I think this group is going to be super competitive. I think LGD still have a chance of getting out. We have no worries for top esports. They made their win look easy. Maybe it'll be a bit more competitive with DRX, but at the same time, they still look like potentially the best team in the tournament. And for the likes of JDG, I still have faith they'll get out, but Suning, I think, is the one that will surprise people tomorrow. They have so many young talents who've never been on the world stage before, great mechanical players, great jungle support synergy, and I really hope fans, get a good taste of that tomorrow.
Yeah, a bit of an unknown quantity there in Group A. I hope they make it exciting, rather, when the games take place tomorrow. Lyric, thank you again so much for joining us. We'll hook up with you again a little later on in the group stages.
Yep, thanks for having me on, guys.
All righty, we're going to step away. On the other side, there's more Worlds Cooldown. Don't you worry. We'll be right back. First coffee. Welcome back to Worlds Cooldown, presented by State Farm. Mark is back. I don't know why we let him back on the show. I think it's just because, you know what? It's because it would look weird if that box on that side was empty.
We need 4 people, and they were like, who is alive and can do this? And I was like, that's me. I was meant for this.
I check all those boxes.
I'm alive and I'm awake, and I did happen to actually watch the games.
Okay, all right. Well, since you watched the games, Mark, why don't you talk to me about that first game of the evening? The game that I almost conveniently wiped from my memory until the producers reminded me that it happened.
Fantastic. We were scrapping bot lane, almost got a kill on Knight, and then this happened in the top lane. Solo gets solo killed, burns his flash, doesn't even make 369 flash after him, and then he just kept getting obliterated. This was a doozy of a game and did not start the day off well for NA fans, but it did look fantastic for LPL fans. Like they were crushing all over the map, and FlyQuest tried to fight hard in the beginning, but just kept getting mechanically outplayed in all these skirmishes. Knight living with no HP, it felt like constantly. It was just so hard, and especially this one was brutal to watch.
Oh my goodness, yeah. It could have been a little bit more competitive from FlyQuest side. For me, I was really impressed. I know we already talked about 369 pretty extensively, but like Karsa being in the right side of the map, being there for the top lane as well, so 369 can expand his lead. He got this much gold and pressure and experience all because of that jungle proximity difference.
How much?
That's a lot.
This much?
James how,
he got this much gold?
It's all because of the jungle proximity difference.
Okay.
He solo killed his opponent
Expanded.
in a matchup he's supposed to lose in the early game. That's like...
It was an expansion, a slight expansion.
His Karsa's jungle proximity was, you can do it, 369.
Yeah. The proximity was on the comms, just telling him like, hey, good job, dude.
He just drive by the lane to wave at him, say, hey, keep it up, bro. You're doing great.
The one positive I will say for FlyQuest is that, they they were playing aggressively and proactively, even from behind. I like that they didn't just roll over and die and just like, all right, let's turtle and wait to lose the game, team. They were constantly looking for plays. They did get outplayed, but they had a lot of near misses that, if they actually capitalized on, if they got a couple of those early kills, the game could have looked a lot closer. And let's be honest, this is a tournament favorite. People have them as probably the #1 team in the world. I do think that Power of Evil and Wild Turtle individually look good. Solo was a big question mark, but again, 369, maybe the best top laner in the world. So, not the worst for FlyQuest, but top obviously crushed them.
Raz?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I know that Freak mentioned it on cast actually, but all of the picks that they had started playing there, a good amount of them except for Karsa's Graves, were picks that they had the least amount of play on in competitively. This was not even them starting the tournament on comfort picks necessarily. It's just, it feels like the team is insanely confident in their individual play, and they're bringing on what was a very successful regular season and playoffs, being champions and all that, to the first day of groups and then smashed with it. I love seeing this, and I want to see more of it. I'm never a fan of a team that changes their identity from a domestic play to international.
Yeah, and I think with how hard they smashed and how hard DRX smashed UL, I think it's setting up a really nice matchup for those two. And seeing if Piosik can repeat that performance. Chovy versus Knight is arguably the first and second best mid laners in the tournament going at it. So those two dominations really did set up a really hype matchup between the two.
Yeah, it does feel a bit like a top-heavy group. I think all the reasons you guys cited, though, is what makes Top Esports an even scarier team when we apply that context of the solo kill in the counter matchup. When we look at the fact that these are some of their least played champions, and then all of a sudden they're still dismantling the opposing team, makes you wonder when they do get everything they want, how much dirtier that result is going to look. And while Top Esports completely demolished their competition today, I think it should be noted that for a World's first-timer in Rogue as an organization, they had a stomp of a victory as well for themselves here over PSG.
Yeah, it started with bullying the mid laner that just got out of quarantine, by the way. He just took one step out the door and instantly got railed. I just did not appreciate watching this as a viewer at least the first 5 minutes, because I wanted to see PSG at least fight. I wanted to see Tank play the game.
Yeah, I mean, the thing too was, it was a whole team hit job, Hansama and Vander are just there right at level 1, and then they go back at level 3. I think Hansama was actually level 2 on the second gank. It was a total obliteration, and this is so nice to see for Rogue. It was a squad that people were kind of just writing off with how dominant they were expecting, JDG and Damwon to be, and I don't think you should sleep on this team at all. They are so good. And, I mean, they have their different playstyle as well that we were kind of hitting on with Finn on the Malphite being pretty different from a lot of the other top laners, but it works for them. And I'm really excited to see what's going to happen when they actually go up against the expected favorites of the group.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really, really cool because it wasn't just about attacking mid lane. It's about having this early game pick on your best player, Larson, and enabling him and putting him ahead. But, PSG on the other side, it's tough because they are not even playing the same roster that they played in play-ins. They've had this back and forth change. There's a lot of talk about, are they going to be able to do as well with their main roster? Because it's a much higher level of competition than what they face in play-ins.
Yeah, Raz, I want to come to you.
Oh, go for it.
I want to come to you in just a moment, but I first want to hit on the point that Mark was making. You said don't sleep on this team. I'll tell you one person who is not sleeping on this team, and that will be Spawn. Spawn is all aboard the Rogue hype train. Right there. He tweeted it out. New tournament favorites in his book. So watch out. Finn Malphite. He's coming for you.
Oh, my God.
All right, Raz, take it away.
The level of seriousness that Spawn is exhibiting this now, I don't know about that one. That's what I'll have to look at that post with a magnifying glass. But I would say that the level of performance that I saw from Rogue was definitely much more than I would have expected. I thought that past that first 5 minutes where they were punishing Tank, the rest of the game, mid-game, was really tight from this team. I thought they were playing exceptionally smart on the map. And if they were to show this level of play versus JD, I actually think that that's going to be really fun to watch, where I would have expected it to be an easy group for both JD and Damwon. So, that's something that I want to see the most out of this group now, is a JD versus Rogue.
And the fact that it was so aggressive from early on when they were kind of the slow and steady team for a lot of the regular season in Europe. The fact that they've been able to flip their playstyle in playoffs, where they went from tank junglers to aggressive junglers, and they're continuing to just go deeper and deeper into the early aggression side of the game, and still maintaining that clean macro, like you're saying, to close the games out. I'm excited to see if they can keep this level up against the best competition in the world.
I think it'll be really interesting, but I'm going to reserve judgment until we see Finn go up against some of these other top laners, because Finn, I think, is one of the weaker top laners in the tournament, and he's going to have to go up against Zoom and Nuguri, who are, probably both in the top 3 as far as, top laners in the world in current performance. So I do think it's extremely difficult. And we talked about some of these players that are extremely flexible and can play all these different counter picks. Nuguri certainly fits into that bill, right? So if you try to blind pick something like a Malphite, maybe you're going up against a Cassio or a Ryze or a Vlad, and you're probably going to have a really bad time.
Well, you won't have to wait long because they play Don Juan tomorrow. So you get that Finn Nuguri matchup in less than 24 hours, my friends. But in their Worlds debut win today, it was Rogue's top laner Finn who gives us our State Farm assist of the day. Flash ulting 3 members of PSG for the team fight victory. Let's take a look.
So I want to talk a little bit about the setup here, for PSG and why I just don't like them even attempting this play in the first fight. You can see that down in the bottom lane, there was actually multiple waves crashing on their turret. And you have to remember that Rift Herald is essentially worth 320 gold on average, right? So if you are losing that much gold in minions, plus you are losing additional experience, which also has its own gold value, it becomes an extremely high risk, low reward play. And we can run this. We can also note that the Orianna has no flash, Graves has no flash, and there is a flash on Malphite. So Finn finds the beautiful engage. Rogue is there to follow up immediately. Multiple flashes in to follow to make sure they can grab those kills. So, PSG, I think that the problem here was even going for the play. Their setup was very poor, and it was a really, really low reward play, even if they made it happen. So kind of just disappointed with that from them, and it doesn't give me much confidence for PSG going forward in this group to even be able to take any games.
Yeah, and it's something that, I look forward to in main stage play because you see the best teams in the world, and you're not going to be seeing plays like this. In play-ins, you'll see a lot of teams that are really devoid in understanding set plays around Rift Heralds, or at least understanding that when to not take those plays, when to be just trading on the side of the map if you're not going to be there on time, or if it's actually just better for you. If it's better for you to get the gold on towards your AD carry instead. So I'm really excited to see best teams in the world just deciding to trade sides of the map for their composition, or what in this specific play when you said when it's just not even beneficial to take a bad fight for them, to just say, okay, we know we took the L on this one, we'll just keep ourselves in the game by taking an alternative route.
Yep. Love to see the trigger pull, though, by Finn in recognizing PSG caught out, not in a position they want to be on the map. 3-man Malphite ult brings home the victory. Now, before we call it a day, let's jump into our World's honors for the day, where we give out a Feels Good award to those that deserve it. So, Raz, we're going to start with you. Who will you be honoring today, my friend?
He's had a tough run. And it was definitely a tough landing. I'm going to give it to Tank. Because
just
Tank,
after flaming him, here we go.
All right.
I wasn't even flaming him. I'm flaming the people who are trying to come and get
him for being so easy to flame. Needed content for cooldown.
Oh my
God.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
Tank tanked the blow. The guy came out of quarantine after wanting to play with his team for how long? He gets out there, and there's a specific strategy to just destroy him in the first 5 minutes of the game so he's not allowed to play. The guy gets tilt-proof from me.
Okay, so it's a tilt-proof honors. I'm glad we've honed in on exactly what the honors is. Mark, flipping over to you. Who are you going with?
I'm going with Piosik. I thought he was incredible today. I mean, his Nidalee absolutely took over that game and dominated. And in particular, because of the amount of scrutiny I think he was under when people were talking about some of the problems DRX could have, there was a lot of attention paid to draft. And then probably the next most criticized was him and some of the issues that he's had in consistency. And so seeing him step up and just absolutely dumpster a team made me feel really good about him. And DRX, maybe people like myself have been overstating some of the issues they might be coming into, and hopefully they can actually challenge top esports now, because otherwise I think a lot of people are looking at that group as a 6-0 for top.
Wow. Azael, and you?
For me, it's 369. I was so looking forward to seeing him play, at Worlds. I do think that they are the best top-focused team in the world when they actually are playing towards him. They play so incredibly well. They are able to pick counter picks. They're able to, guard him and escort in waves whenever their top laner is in trouble. You'll see Knight actually holding DP just to counter gank for top. They play so well to the win conditions, and it was impressive to see that, not only were they able to do that and get the jungle focus up top, but that he was able to actually win a 1v1 against Solo after Solo had purchased before he bought in a matchup he's supposed to lose in the early game. And that is just terrifying.
Yeah.
When that happens, you are so ready to go next on that game as a top laner, and Solo walked back, immediately died to a gank, and then he was for sure ready to go next at that point.
But that is also so much what excites me about watching not only this team, but this player in 369, because I think it was you, Raz, who was saying this is exactly the kind of guy who will pull out those picks like a Quinn top, whatever he needs to smash the victory if given, or get the lane rather, if given the chance.
Yes, and that's what I want to see in main stage is the flexibility. Like when we're seeing stale first picks coming through constantly, it's because a team's not willing to give that time of day for their top lane. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that coming out of 369 as the tournament goes on.
All right, well, today's Was Asleep, Didn't Watch. Mark is going to be giving us his 1-minute summary for our viewers that did not watch the games but are watching Cooldown right now. Good morning to you, and Mark, take it away.
Yeah, so if you have missed the games and missed the earlier portion of...
First of all, what are you doing? Go watch the games. But also, sorry, Mark, for interrupting.
It's my minute. Give it back.
I'm so sorry.
Yield it. All right. This was the day where the better team won easy. When Plains was so crazy, upsets all over the place, we were popping off. We must have swapped out the script writers because this was the team that was favored to win was going to win. And for 4 of them, it was also just complete slaughters. And I think for me, that was a little sad to see going in. But for the most part, top to bottom, if you look at who won the games, it was the team you would have expected to win. There's some closer ones like Damwon versus JDG where you don't exactly know, but I think some people were favoring Damwon. I was, and so that one expected. Gen.G over LGD, another contentious group, but still Gen.G was probably more favored in the public. And then same thing with Fnatic versus TSM. So I think totally went to chalk. I'm totally disappointed in the NA script writers, and I want something, or not NA, World script writers.
Yeah, whoa, Mark. Oh, whoa.
Success in Group A or something.
Okay, fair enough. I tell you what, on my honor, as soon as the show's over, I will go hunt down the play-in scriptwriter, and I'll make sure that they're on tomorrow's show for you.
Thank you.
All right? All right, yeah, perfect. Now, let's take a look at what's in store for us on tomorrow's show with our schedule. We got another 6 games coming your way. Machi versus Team Liquid, G2 Esports versus Suning. Our first look at Group A there, right at the top of the day. We follow that up with rehits of a couple of our other groups, Group B and Group C in Rogue versus Damwon, PSG versus JD, and then of course Gen.G versus TSM, LGD versus Fnatic. So closing it out with the group that feels the least decided. But our first look at Group A tomorrow, that's where I want to get your opinions. Machi versus Team Liquid, G2 versus Suning. Azael, I'll come to you first.
I think these ones are going to be really, really exciting. We get the first look at Machi. Team Liquid, I think, was looking very polished in play-in, so they are going to be favored, in this. But if they want a chance at making some noise in this group, this is a game you have to win because G2 and Suning are the heavy favorites, and I think that is going to be the expected battle for first in that second matchup, which really should be very, very exciting. G2 is strong, but Suning, I think, is overlooked by many in the community because they don't have a lot of big names, and if you haven't watched the LPL, you might not realize just how good this team could be.
Raz, what is your take on that? Because I've been hearing this a lot from a number of analysts, Azael and others included, that Suning is one of the harder teams to pin down and what the expectation should be.
Yeah, I really enjoy Suning. I actually have them topping the group while a lot of people can be wavering because they do have like young players coming out. People don't know who Bin is because, it's coming out like first international event. Same with Huanfeng. Same with Angel. So, it is a risky pick because they do not have the veterans that Team Liquid and G2 do across the board. Team Liquid, of course, still having a rookie AD carry, but, for the most part, they have that guidance being there multiple times. Suning does not, but Suning just has that level of play that is that discipline that they've shown throughout the regular season, throughout playoffs. They're a team that is incredibly smart and do it around an insane carry jungler in SOFM. So for me, I have Suning topping the group, and I really want to watch Suning versus G2 Esports because that is going to really set the tone.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the other side. I think G2 should probably still be able to take this one. I think they're a very solid team Suning. They actually, people might not remember Sword Art and these kinds of things. They're pretty good top to bottom, but so is G2, and I think G2 has that veteranship that you're talking about, and their macro is still really good. They're still one of the best macro teams in the world at finding creative opportunities in a meta that's pretty. Not like it's pretty prescriptive of like, okay, got to go fight these dragons, got to go figure out how you're going to fight these dragons. G2 is still good about finding side lane plays and stuff like that, and I think it could potentially throw a team like Suning for a loop where in the LPL, I think people are a little bit more down to just go to these fights, and so I'm excited to see how those two styles clash, but I'm going to G2.
It'll be really interesting, right? Because I think how Suning got a lot of their advantages in the LPL was SOFM and Bin really kind of tag teaming up and crushing top laners, and Wonder is rarely exploited. This is one of the best Western top laners ever in Wonder, and I also think that they should have an advantage with Caps in the mid lane, who has been so good internationally. Really, the only guy that he kind of has consistently stumbled against is Rookie, and Angel is not him, right? Yeah. So I think that is fair to say. But I've got to say, talking about power rankings, I can blame some Vedius here, because Vedius was flaming me for putting G2 top of the group, and then he went around and posted his power rankings, and G2 was top of his group.
Well, now, hold on. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense there, Azale. Sounds like Vedius may have lied.
Copied some homework.
Yeah, maybe walked something back.
They were all ganging up on me. FLICKR retweeted saying that they should be top of the group. I was getting bullied. It was 2-on-1.
He was trying to have the unique opinion. He was trying to push you off your throne there. So good on you standing firm.
Yeah, they can't have you predicting the same thing and also looking smart, Azale. They got to try and convince you to go elsewhere. Raz, if anything, give me the case for Team Liquid. Now we're talking, talking it up to make me believe almost that it's going to be G2 Suning. So what would be the case for Team Liquid in this group?
I think one surprising thing about Team Liquid for me is I know that we sing the praises of Tactical being an incredibly strong AD carry that had like those solo performances. But on an international event, we even saw it during play-ins, Impact is insanely good. Jensen is a fantastic mid laner. And if they just come out and just have like strong team fights, they already have what to me is impressive understanding of macro. Like they already have like a great setup around objectives. And so a lot of the times when you go to these events, people usually try and pinpoint Impact, like the weakest side of the map, and it just doesn't happen. So for Team Liquid, it's your weak side to perform. And I have full faith that Core JJ and Jensen and Tactical will have fantastic games. I just want to be able to see Impact and Broxa more specifically have good games.
Well, they'll kick things off with Machi Esports tomorrow. That's the beginning of our second day of groups, but that is also the conclusion of our first. That's going to do it for us here. So on behalf of myself, the casters, the remote broadcast crews from all around the world and in every single language, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time for more Worlds. Good night. Good day. Whatever.